But one of the things that we heard about was this apron thingy.
Yeah, so in your kit of parts, you're going to probably get a red and a blue apron. And whoever is the team member that's going to be working at the terminal loading the cargo has to wear the apron so that we can identify whether you're red or blue. And that's also to help us identify that you're only using the colored balls for your alliance, that you're not picking up blue balls if you're red and vice versa. And evidently you can decorate these as well. So whoever's doing the loading at the terminal will have to have a apron on. And of course, the standard rules apply. Coaches can't touch controls. They can't touch the cargo. So they basically are hands in their pockets.
Okay. So in the scenario, if you do have where you need to have a technician come in and be a human player, there are going to be some aprons that are at the field. And so what I would imagine is that we would need to give you an apron, because I can't imagine that you guys are going to have extra aprons in, you know, available for this. But just food for thought and something to stop and consider a little bit different than what we've done before. All right, so let's keep going down here. We've got the other logistics. Now we're going to get into our game rules. Now, some of these game rules are ones that we've known about forever and a day. So we're going to go through these pretty rapidly, but you're going to want to go back, because we have not read these with a fine-tooth comb to find out if there's any minor little changes that they have done for us. So G101, this is basically the rule that says that, hey, if there is any unsafe robot that's on the field, then we are going to disable you if that happens after the match has started. G102, robots stay on the field during the match. Yep, if they contact anything outside the field. And in this particular case, if you end up building a robot that's got arms, well, for starters, there's going to be a rule later on that says your arms can only go so far outside of the frame perimeter. But one of the things to stop and consider when you're doing your design work is that if that arm does a swipe outside the railing, the thing that it is most likely to come in contact with are the stands that the referee's tablets are on. That is the most likely thing that is there. So think about that when you're considering doing your design work, because if you do, and I'll be honest with you, if I see a robot coming toward me, I try and take the tablet and tilt backwards, but that's not a requirement that I do that. And if my eyes are pointed in this direction and you're coming at me and you hit it, then we're going to disable you. And we don't like to do that, but that's the rules and the ways that they are. Keep your bumpers low. This is a little bit different than what we have seen in the previously. What this is telling us is that if it's repeated or more than momentary, we need to disable you. So if you've got one of those little corner bumpers that ends up getting whoopajawed because it gets hit and it stays, you know, and it's no longer in compliance with the rules, we're going to have to disable you. I don't like this one, but that's the way that the rule is written. So know that rule has changed just a little bit. And I think there's probably going to be questions that are going to be things, and I'm hoping that you guys will ask this of first so that it comes out, which is what's going to happen if I have those bumpers where my colors, where I use the Velcro and just flip them back and forth between red and blue. What happens if the Velcro lets go and thus this bumper, half of, one of my sides is showing red when I'm blue, and my fabric is flailing that's out there. And I'm sitting here going, well, that's probably not in compliance with the bumper rules, but so we're gonna, let's see what FIRST has to say about that. I would absolutely groan if I had to disable a robot because the Velcro went bleh and did that. G104, keeping the bumpers together. That's pretty much pretty standard. You lose part of your bumpers, a part comes off, it's an automatic disable. And for those of you who are new, as far as FIRST is concerned, the way that we do this is the bumper falls off. Whoever the ref is that sees it usually is hollering at the head ref. The head ref is turning around and telling the people who are at the scoring table to disable you. If I'm you and my bumpers fall off, I'm going to get to whatever place I want to be at end game as quick as I can get there. I'm going, because you guarantee you are going to be disabled. So take advantage of those 2 or 3 or 4 seconds that you've got for us to actually get you disabled. You can't leave any parts on the field. That's pretty standard. G106 is talking about tall robots. They're only allowed in the hangar zone. So when you go to hang, and this does not talk about being at end game. So you, as far as we can tell, you can go and start your hang at any point in time, but you need to be in that hangar zone. And it's part of your bumpers, so you don't have to be fully in that zone. 107, don't extend. This is the one that says don't go more than 16 inches beyond your frame perimeter. Keep in mind in your design, especially when you're designing your hangers, that if you start dragging some hook and we see that it's more than 16 inches, that is something that that's going to violate this rule. That's going to cause us to award you a tech foul. G108, not too high. A robot may not position itself such that any part of its bumper is higher than the highest rung. All right. As best we can figure, what we're thinking that they're getting at here with this one is the concept that if I've gone and grabbed one of the hangers, is that the rest of my robot flips. The rest of my robot cannot be higher than that rung. And if you think about it, when I've seen some robots hanging previously, that might be a case where I've pulled myself in and my little feet are up there. So think about that when you're doing your design. Does anybody else have any comments or any?
Really quick, Jan.
Sure.
The high rung is not the highest rung. The traverse rung, I believe, is the highest rung. Right? I believe it's low, mid, high, and then traverse.
Oh, wow.
If you go to the definitions part, high
Uh-huh.
rung is 6'3", and traversal rung is 7'7". So the high rung is not the highest rung. Thank you, FIRST. That makes complete sense.
Okay, something else for us to look at. All
So
right.
if you're hanging on the traverse rung that's 7'7", your bumpers can't be higher than what, 6'3", right?
So what I need to do is I need to hang and make sure that the rest of my robot is lower than me hanging.
Honestly, I'm 6'3", and the idea of bumpers even being 6'2" is terrifying. But
And I just won't go near the hangar. All right. Here we get down to avoid the purple plane. And I'll be honest with you, when I read this, I was kind of like, what the devil is a purple plane? And so what we did is we had to go off and go searching for the purple plane. So what the purple plane is this is the terminal. So this is where we've got our human people that are standing back here that are, you know, retrieving the cargo and returning it back in. And there is an imaginary purple plane that is right here. So what that says to me is that, and hang on just a second, let me do something. I want that, thank you. What this says to me is that when my robots are pushing cargo into here, and somebody made the comment, why would the robots be pushing the cargo into there? And the reason that I think that they may be doing it is if they have not designed something to pick up the cargo to put it into their robot, and that what they are doing is they are depending upon the people, their human players, to actually be sending it back down here so that it will plop into my robot. But as I am pushing my cargo in, I don't want to push it beyond that purple plane. So that's where we've got that. Any questions or thoughts or comments about that? Okay, hang on. I gotta go find my, yeah, cool. Let's do this over here. So that's my G109, and notice that the violation on that is the disable, because I think that what they're driving at there is that that's a safety issue, that if your robot has gone that far into it, there's a chance that it may actually be coming in contact with a person. G201 is a pretty standard one. Don't expect to gain by doing other harms. There are some exceptions there that you can read through. G202 is our pinning rule that we see that are often. G203 is don't collude with partners to shut down major paces of the game. Keep in mind that in this game, you've got, you know, some pretty tight areas. There's not a ton, you know, a ton of room where we're going to be able to be going back and forth. So it's not unheard of in my mind to think about, you know, doing some blocking and doing some colluding with two robots for that. So be careful when you're talking through that. All right. G108, not too high. A robot may not position itself. We've already done that one. Not really sure. Okay. All right. There is this note that's here that you may overlook, that they've come in and basically said that 204, 205, and 206 are mutually exclusive, which I really like, because I don't like when I have to do penalties that start adding up. So 204, 205, and 206 are mutually exclusive. So if you violate one of these rules, it's the one that has the most punitive penalty that is going to come into play. So 204 and 205, these are ones that we have seen before. 204 is stay out of other robots. The one thing that this does warn you about is that if the design of your bumpers leaves a gap in the bumpers, then that gap is on you. That's your problem that is happening there. It's also talking about that I'm going to go inside your frame perimeter with something other than my bumpers. So 204, take a close look at that. 205, this isn't combat robots. This kind of tickled me because they haven't referred to this one this way previously. I think what we want to do is that we're going to want to read through this and listen to what they have to say in the Q&A. I know that in the past, we let robots play pretty hard when you're doing bumper to bumper contact. There are some robots that we've seen in the past that we really kind of groan over how much power they have when they hit other robots. Reps, anybody want to make any comments about this one?
No, it's just like all your friends. This is not BattleBots. When they ask you when you do robots.
I had a comment about 204. I know you already touched on this earlier, but it's something that I feel I failed to grasp the gravity of when I was a student. So as an old man, I now look back at it. When you design part of your robot to stick outside your bumpers after the game starts, is usually intakes of some sort. You need to be very careful when you play defense with a part of your robot that sticks out of the bumpers. Because if you have a part of your robot that sticks outside the bumpers, it's very easy for it to go over the bumpers of the robot you're making contact with and start touching stuff inside the robot. So be very careful if you're playing defense with a part of your robot outside the bumpers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Grant. And I think that the other thing is, well, there's a couple of things that happen when we start talking about components that are outside the frame of the robot. One of the things that I will frequently see is that when we are setting up for a match, there will be something that will be leaning outside the frame of the robot, and we're spending time figuring out how to get it back in. So if you are going to have things that are going to be outside the frame of the robot, make sure that you've got a way that if you need to manually retract that for setup, to manually secure it, that you've got a way to do that. And then the other thing is, you know, Grant was talking about, you know, it's easy for that extension to go inside of another robot. But this, the other piece of this is, if you've got something hanging out the end, you know, on the other side of your bumper, and somebody comes in and smashes it, that's shame on you. You know, if they do damage to you because you've got your element outside of the bumper zone, that's fair, you know, that's fair game.
When you're outside your bumpers, not only do you set yourself up to sort of void the damage rule for anything outside, but you also set yourself up to easily break 204. So yeah, be very careful and preferably be able to retract in the game anything that sticks out. Although I know that's not always feasible or at the top of team's priorities list.
Good points. 206 is don't tip or entangle. The point here is deliberate. Okay, there are points in times where robots do get tipped over, and trying to figure out whether it is deliberate or not can be challenging for referees. So we will do the best that we can do. G207, let them shoot. A robot may not contact either directly or transitively an opponent robot whose bumpers are contacting their launch pad. Now, I don't know whether you guys noticed where the launch pads were, but they're basically right here on the ends of the hangars. So if I'm in contact with that, then you better not be contacting me, because I'm, you know, I am protected. I've got the ability to do that.
Really quick, Jan, this
Sure.
is probably on me because I probably missed it, but what's the deal with some of the rules being green and having an asterisk and some of them being blue and not?
You know, I don't know. But I will, well.
So that was a change they made in their like preseason update a few days ago. The green rules are evergreen, and basically they're rules that tend to not change year to year. That doesn't mean like you can skip over reading them, but it's like they just put all the rules that are like always there first.
Super, thank you, Evan. And that makes so much sense. That
Evan, you should be like a referee. That's pretty good.
Evan is deserting us. He's going somewhere up north.
Like his brother. Boo.
Yeah, we love you anyway. All right, so that's the let them shoot. There is this let them climb. Now let's read this one slowly because this one does have some implications that aren't obvious. A robot may not contact an opponent robot if they are contacting their mid, high, or transversal rungs. What we noticed in there is it said nothing about the lowest rung. Okay, so if somebody's on their lowest rung, this rule is not going to apply to them. The second one that's there, and this is an opponent robots whose bumpers are at least partially in their hangar zone during the last 30 seconds. So they are going to be protected on that lower if it's the last 30 seconds and their bumpers are inside of the hangar. And that's kind of a big violation that's awarded there. You get awarded a transversal rung hanger point at the end of the match. Any questions or comments about that one out there in Klaus world?
Do you have a question? Okay, no questions.
Okay. G209, don't climb on each other. In previous years, we've been able to climb on each other to get to things. This year, no time to do it. G210, we actually talked about G210 earlier in terms of autonomous and where your bumpers, and what you could contact. So we think they're going to clarify that one a little bit. Then we get into field interaction. G103, be careful what you're interacting with. I'm kind of surprised that this one isn't one of those evergreen ones because this is what we refer to as our grasping, grappling. So don't damage the field. God, for a minute there, I thought it said a reasonable amount of water. G302, lower exits are off limits. Robots may not reach into or straddle the lower exit. So what we're talking about there is, here we go with this hub, and there are exit points. There's 4 exit points that are lower. And so you can't block these and you can't go into them. And if you do, then it's going to end up being a penalty. It's a tech foul. And if it's repeated, it's a yellow card. So that's something that you're going to have to be careful of.
While we have the picture of the hub pulled up, Jan, can we remind teams that it's not just because it leaves your robot, it's not scored, right? Like it's possible. I feel like this is called like a field fault. If it's like 2 seconds left in autonomous and you shoot the ball and it might fall in like the bowl by the end of autonomous, but FMS doesn't necessarily score it the second it enters, right?
Well, actually, I was reading about this, and if I read it correctly, what FMS is going to do is FMS is going to wait 5 seconds after the end of autonomous and 10 seconds after at end game. And I think that the reason is that one of the things that we were talking about, because we were commenting, so when the cargo is scored, something in this hub is being able to detect whether it is a red cargo or whether it is a blue cargo. And somebody made the comment that they thought that that detection was, and I have a feeling that maybe it's right here. So as I'm exiting and I don't know exactly where it is on the lower, but that my guess, you know, I mean, it's as the cargo is leaving. Does that make sense?
I believe I clicked the little play button in the bottom left. It won't work here because it's just a screenshot, but they have like a 2-minute video showing it, and it looked like those are where the sensors are,
Okay. All right.
where you
So
highlighted.
I think that the 5 seconds at the end of autonomous is a good thing, and 10 seconds should be more than enough for
Yeah, I didn't realize they had changed that. My comment is now
yeah.
outdated.
And you know, I think the other thing to do too is that, you know, this is a contraption, and if we start seeing that cargo is getting stuck in and it's not coming out, then that's where teams need to help us keep an eye on that, to make sure that if we see that happening, then we'll get the FTAs to work on making the hub work like it's supposed to. But if we see that the things are not being counted, you know, at the end game and at the end of autonomous, then we can. And what we'll do is we will keep an eye on it at the end of autonomous. At the end of the end game, we should be able to go in and see and take care of that. Autonomous is going to be a little bit more difficult to do. So then we go into talking about the cargo. Keep the cargo inbounds. That's nothing new. That's just, you know, don't be shooting it off into the audience. Use the cargo as directed. That's pretty standard.
Jan, I thought in previous years the keep the field elements in bounds had the statement that it had to be intentional. Or am I misremembering? Because this year it doesn't seem like intent matters. So even if you like erroneously shoot it off, it's a foul this year.
That's a good question. That you've got a good point there. So maybe we'll see clarification from that from the game design committee on whether, because you're right, in previous years it had to be intentional, which means we never called it because people aren't stupid.
Yeah, it usually happens in autonomous, which by definition is like not intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, yeah. That's a good question to ask. 420 cargo uses directed. Yeah, that goes there. And then 403 is maximum of 2 cargos. Robots might not have greater than momentary control of 2 cargo at a time. Now, there is 404, which is something that's a little bit different, which says don't hoard the opposing cargo. And it says a robot may not restrict access to more than 3 of the opposing alliance's cargo, except during the final 30 seconds of the match. So stop and consider that during the match, I could have a blue robot that's just holding 2 red cargos to keep them away from the other team. And as long as they're not holding 3, and as long as somebody else is not holding, or actually as long as they're not holding 4, but you've got a max of 2. So if you've got one of your robots that's holding 2 reds and somebody else who's holding 1 red, then you're not violating that, but you're keeping the red team from being able to score that red cargo. Not my favorite way to do things, but that's the way that I read that. Now they are giving some examples of restricting cargo and the hoarding, so that if you are holding and you also start blocking, that we could enforce this rule.
That Hangar one is interesting. If you just have cargo in your hangar, could have even just rolled in there.
Using Hangar contact protection afforded to prevent an opponent from legally reaching for opposing. So are you reading that, Grant, to say that if I'm a Red Alliance and I push for,
I read it as if, I don't know what the fours, I read initially as like if I'm holding 2 and I'm hanging so low that another robot can't go beneath me to get something in the back, then the 2 in me plus the 2 in my back of the hangar is like 4. But this looks like it has to be 4 specifically in the hangar to apply.
well, I think that what it's talking about is forget A, what's said in A there. What it's talking about is if I push 4 cargo into the back of my hangar, and then I start trying to hang, and you can't get to that cargo without the risk of running into me, then that would be a violation of this rule.
Well, you don't have to be trying. 208A only applies if you actually are I guess you can contact and not be done yet. But interestingly, 208A doesn't include the lower rung. It only includes the higher 3. So like if you're touching your lower rung, this one doesn't apply, but I don't.
Yeah, I think we're going to probably have to come up with some different scenarios and think through this one. But I mean, there's only 11 pieces of cargo that are out on the field. So if you are hoarding 3, it's going to make for a boring game.
Yeah.
And they don't like boring games.
Grant, I think you're onto something there too. Let's say you hang early because that's how you hang, and then you're just hanging for the next minute, and some cargo rolls underneath you. Well, now you're at a disadvantage. You're going to get popped by 404 if more than 3 cargoes roll in there. So that would incentivize you not to hang early.
True.
Yeah. Okay. Food for thought, things for you guys to work through. 405. This one is one that kind of surprised me. Don't catch cargo. So what this is saying is that when the cargo is coming off of these upper exits, you can't just catch it. It has to hit something. It has to hit something else before it can be picked up.
Keep in mind the blue box indicates that regardless of if you intend it or not, right? It's up to you to design your robot.
Okay. Now, what I find is interesting here in the human rules is that most of these rules are the ones that we've seen forever and a day, and it looks like most of them are what considered to be an evergreen. H101, be a good person, be nice, have consideration. H102, only play with one robot. H103, humans, stay off the field until it goes green. I don't know where the green lights are going to be, but we all know that there's going to be green lights that are going to tell us when to go on the field. H104, don't step over the guardrail. It's a safety thing. We've done a really good job on that in the past couple of years. H105, ask other teams to throw a match. Not cool. Yeah, we don't do that in Georgia. H106, let someone coerce you into throwing a match. Also not cool. That just doesn't happen. I don't worry about that stuff. H107, don't abuse arena access. This is a little bit of where we get into making sure that your technician knows what their responsibility is and what they are doing on the field. And yeah. H108, be careful what you interact with in terms of don't climb and hang on things. H201 and section 8.2 has to do with the interaction with referees. We have got this wonderful catch-all egregious and exceptional violations, which for those of you who are not familiar with it, basically is if you've done something that we don't think is fair and we just really think it's egregious and there's nothing explicitly that doesn't let you do it, we have this rule to fall back on. There have been very few times when I've had to do this. H202, one student, one head ref. In Georgia, we do this one just a little bit differently, okay? What the rule is that at any point in time, if there are questions that the student has, we've got question boxes that the students can come in and can ask the referee, the head referee, a question. In Georgia, we are okay if there is an adult that wants to listen to the conversation between the head ref and the student to make sure that the communication is what it needs to be. I don't want to be talking to the adult, but I want them to be able to coach the student as they're asking questions. And one of the things that I tell folks is if you're going to come up and you're going to argue with me about a call that was made, generally that is because we've called a violation, then here's the way that this works. You came up and you tell me that such and such happened in a certain quadrant of the field. Be sure and tell me what the quadrant is, because if it's not something that I saw myself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around and I'm going to find the referee that was assigned to that particular quadrant and say, team so-and-so is saying such and such happened. How did you see it? And if it's something that two referees were watching, I'll get both of them to talk to about it before I come back to you and before I talk back to the student. There is a second scenario, which is you disagree with the way that we are interpreting a rule, that you see that there's an and in it where you think that we are applying the rule using an or. In that particular case, make sure that you have the rule. Make sure that you know, if the rule says that this is only a penalty if it's intentional and you think that it was not intentional, bringing those things to our attention. You know, we're having to interpret these rules just like you guys are. And there have been points in times, there have been times in past seasons where it's like, yeah, we got it wrong. And we will change what we've called. But it's your responsibility to question that. And I welcome that opportunity for you guys to come. Now, that doesn't mean that after every match, you come and say, what were the penalties and who got them? We will very frequently. In Georgia, you guys are super, super lucky because we've got referees who've been doing this for so long. At the end of the match, my referees come and tell me about the penalties that they call, the fouls and the tech fouls that they call. And we double check ourselves to make sure that what we've called a foul is a foul and not a tech foul, and vice versa. The other thing we do is we make sure that we're not double counting, that, you know, everybody's got their quadrant that they're looking at, but sometimes I'm looking across the way and see something that is happening. And so we have these conversations. The other thing that a lot of the refs are able to do is they're able to tell me that team 1, 2, 3, 4 violated rule, you know, G201. And I will make a note of that. And then what I ask my refs to do is go find team 1, 2, 3, 4 and make sure that they know what they did. Because I have, my theory is that if you don't know that you violated a rule, then there's a real good chance you're going to do it again. But if you do know that you violated it, then you can try to not violate it again. Where FIRST tells us that we don't have to do that, and they are not expecting us to do it as referees. It's just something that we try to do, and we're not 100% on it. We're not guaranteed, but we think that at least trying to do this will put you guys into a better position. Any of my refs want to make any comments about that?
Hey, Jan, what's the procedure if a student comes to the question box and they have video evidence to show you?
Go away. We are not allowed by FIRST to watch video. So please just don't bring it to me, because I'm just going to look at you and kind of go, can't watch it.
Fun fact, if you go to 11.2, we're not allowed to review video, photos, or artistic renderings of a match. So if someone literally draws a match in 2 minutes and they wanted to show us their artwork, unfortunately, we're unable to appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, I will tell you, and I have done this with, I have actually done this with some mentors before, which we will sit down and we will talk about hypothetical scenarios about if this is happening and that is happening and this is happening and this. And I am completely fine with talking through some hypotheticals to make sure that I understand. Not that I'm going to go back and that I'm going to change anything as far as a match is concerned, but if just to make sure that we are interpreting rules correctly. As a ref crew, we talk about hypothetical situations every time we turn around. All right, let's keep on going. We're getting close here. Before and after the match, H301, be prompt when you're coming to and from the field. One of the things that we have noticed over the past year, especially since COVID has been happening, is that a lot of teams at the end of the match will sit behind the driver's station and be waiting to see the results of the match. And they will not be detaching their driver's station and moving on out and going to get their robots off the field. Not acceptable. You need to be moving. You need to be going into getting your robots off the field. One of the things that we do when we are setting up our competition is we allot so much time for a match. How long does it take to set up? How long does it take to run? And how long does it take to get everybody off the field? That's what we call a turn. And the faster we do turns, the more matches you guys are going to get. And so it's to your benefit to get off the field, because we don't want to let the next teams onto the field until you are safely off of the field. And if we stop and look at this, I mean, here's what normally happens. Normally, let me see. Yep, good. Normally, I've got teams that are entering this gate. So this would normally be my blue teams, and this will normally be my red teams. And what's happening right here is these guys are the ones that I'm going to be the most concerned about because they're hanging. And we are probably not going to let any red robots onto the field until everybody is hanging. This is where you will go off the field. Now, the blue guys, since they're all the way over here, we're going to have more flexibility with letting the blue robots onto the field before this completely gets cleaned out. But that's when we're fussing at you at the end of the matches and talking about get your robots off the field. That's what we're doing, and that's what we are trying to do, and why we are trying to do it. There is some ugly stuff regarding coming onto the field during your elimination matches. Read through that. It's in the tournament section. I haven't gone to look at it for this year. I can't imagine that they've changed it drastically, but when we get to the point that we're doing timeouts, you better be on the field when that timeout ends. And if you're not, we're going to close the gates. So be sure that you read through that. H302, teams may not enable the robots on the field. Nope, can't do that. H303, you can't bring just anything you want. So you can't bring powered hand tools on there. You can't bring, powered signaling devices. There's a whole list of things that are in there. H304, by invitation only. Drive teams for the current match are allowed in their respective alliance in their terminal areas, and then show up for your matches. On the show up for your matches, they've gotten us a new diagram here, starting with, has your team passed the initial inspection? Initial inspection. Every time you make a change to your robot, you've got to get it re-inspected. But for this particular, for what we're talking about here, we're talking about the initial inspection. So if you have not passed your initial inspection, then you do not participate in the match. And if you do, did they change these rules, guys?
They disqualify the whole alliance if they miss in the playoffs. That's hardcore.
Is that real? That's new? This used to be true for no.
Well, isn't the definition of participate like you just have to send a human player at a minimum? You don't have to bring your robot.
But what they're saying is that if your robot has not passed its initial inspection and you have a human player that participates in the match, then all teams on the alliance receive a red card. That's not the way it's been in the past. Hang on just a second.
I pulled up the rule. A team is only permitted to participate in a qualification or playoff match and receive ranking or match points if the robot has passed an initial complete inspection, if prior to the start of the match, the team is disqualified, not eligible, if after the start of the match, the entire alliance receives a red card for that match. Please take note of this rule. It is important that teams ensure their alliance of partners have passed inspection. Allowing a partner that has not passed inspection to play puts the alliance at risk of red cards. Teams should check with their alliance partners early and help them pass inspection before competing.
Ouch. This is new.
Y'all got to snitch on each other, man. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, what it basically means is that I now have skin in the game to make sure that everybody within my alliance has passed the initial inspection. And if I have passed my initial inspection and I'm basically a no-show, then it's only my team that is going to get the red card. And this whole process, rookies and people who haven't participated in FIRST in a long time, they struggle with understanding this. So the more that we can do to help people understand the way that this rule works, the better off that it can be. So, okay. Yeah.
Well, I will say be careful because I believe I saw this happen once where the alliance made sure that they were paired with someone uninspected and they knew that and they weren't there. And then like right at the last minute, like a human player from the uninspected team like ran onto the field and stood. So be careful.
Well, yeah. Okay. So if we come back over here, there's that. This is the identify yourself, which means showing your team buttons, plug into your driver's station, don't bang on the glass that's in front of your driver's station. 309, know your robot setup, know where you're going to place it.
I will state also, please know which one of your team members will be the ones picking up the robot and make sure they're not the ones pushing the cart. While it is amusing to watch teams argue on the field about who's going to pick it up, it does slow things down.
Yes. Know your drive team positions for who's going to be in what positions. Leave the cargo alone. Prior to the start of the match, human players may not remove the cargo from the terminal. Okay. During autonomous, stay behind the lines as far as the starting line goes. And this is yeah, we found it in here somewhere. Disconnect and set down your controllers is 402. 403 is during autonomous, let the robot do its things. We don't do anything. 404, auto cargo delivery. Cargo may only be introduced to the field by a human player in the terminal area. So this is where we get our basketball players that are, and what you will find is that it is only during autonomous that they have the ability to do that. It's not during the whole match that they have the ability to do that. During the match, 501, coaches and other teams, hands off. 502, don't wander outside your alliance station. 503, coaches, the cargo is off limits. Coaches, put your hands in pockets. That's the best thing that you can do. 504, Teleop cargo delivery. Cargo may only be introduced to the field by a human player and through the guard. That's the one that's basically saying you can't do the basketball throws that you can do during autonomous. Okay. It doesn't say that directly, but that's what it's talking about, because the guard that it's talking about is this guy. So it can only come by going through this way. Opponent cargo is off limits. During a match, human players may not contact opponent cargo. So if I'm back here in my terminal, I'm only going to be touching the stuff that's mine. Now this says if I'm just moving stuff out of the way, you know, that's no problem. But I'm not holding and I'm not sending things back into the field. 506, only feed your alliance robots. So the human players may only deliver their cargo, may not deliver cargo to their opponent robot. And there's a foul involved if you do that. 507, human players watch your reach. You don't want to reach beyond that purple plane that we were talking about and looking at.
I have
earlier.
a question, Jan.
You bet.
So say, are there protections before, I believe there aren't, but if I'm a robot and I'm touching the terminal, other robots are allowed to bump me, right? So what if I'm below the chute and my human player lets go of cargo, and in between letting go of the cargo and it rolling down the chute, another robot pushes me out of the way and then it falls into an opponent robot, since is that a H506 or?
I think that that's one of the ones that they may end up clarifying for us, Grant, because
Okay.
when I read that, my brain kind of went to that too. And, and there was a piece of me that, there was a piece of me that says, so what happens if the cargo rolls down the terminal ramp, bounces off of my robot and lands in somebody else, and is sitting here going, I don't think that those are the scenarios that they're trying to
I
avoid.
understand why it's a rule, right? Because otherwise you could like purposely have another robot break the, like, you can't have two opposing teams cargo. So it's to guard against the human player forcing that robot to make a foul, even though there already is a foul for forcing a foul.
Yep.
But I assume I hope they make some clarification that has to be like intentional.
Okay. This is usually the rules that we go through. There is another set of rules that let me see if this is going to do it. There is another section from a rule standpoint that we typically go through. And what that is let me go back up here to the top. Is this section here that starts on page 109 that's about the tournaments. If you are somebody who is new to FIRST, this is a section that will be a good idea. This goes through and talks about the yellow cards and the red cards, reading through that. Match replay. I'm looking through. I haven't looked through this yet to see if there's anything that's in here. What is freeze robot?
Oh, you can't
Oh,
drive.
that's when they're doing measurements. Practice matches, qualifier matches, match assignments, qualification rankings. Here we go. Ranking score, then you've got the average match points, not including fouls. Oh, that's interesting that's going to be your second criteria for ranking. Interesting.
They want exciting games, I guess.
That's different than previous, and that's something what that says to me is that it's encouraging teams to score points. Interesting. And then you see that it will go to the Hangar points, and then it goes to the Alliance taxi and the auto cargo points. And then be aware that we have before seen sort order go all the way down to FMS doing something randomly. So just be aware that is possible.
What is Alliance taxi again?
That is during autonomous, when you get out of
just
your
leaving
tarmac.
the tarmac.
Yeah.
They call that a taxi boat. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I don't see anything else that's in here. The other thing that I was going to share with you guys, and this is something this is last year's. Hang on just a second. But this is something that we do as refs, and it's something that I encourage teams to do, which is to come in and take the rules and identify which ones of them are fouls, which one of them are tech fouls, what's a disable, what's a yellow card, what's a red card, and make sure that the people who are on your drive team know what's what. Because back when many years ago, when my daughter was on a team, if you didn't know the rules, then you weren't going to be on the drive team. They would have there are some teams that I've heard have had competitions that if you couldn't pass a test to know what these rules were, then they weren't gonna let you drive. And that makes a lot of sense, because you've spent a long time building a robot to play a game, and it's, frustrating to lose a match because somebody didn't know about a particular rule. So that's everything that that I've got. Does anybody have any additional questions? Evan, any questions from the room or any questions that have come in from the broadcast?
Yeah, we have a couple. I'm gonna turn on the ceiling mics. So try saying your question and hopefully they can hear it.
Are we allowed to climb directly to the traversal bar? Or do we have to climb the other bars first?
I don't know if you could hear that. The
I
question-
did, and I was trying to think.
Yeah, no, so here's the deal. If you look in the manual, you see the height of the traversal bar. That bar and the one before it, there's no way you can reach those with the limitation on how high the robot can reach.
That's correct. Yeah. Traversal is
You have to
7'7".
traverse those.
High
Yeah.
is 6'3", and your robot cannot be taller than 5'6" within the hangar.
Exactly.
Outside the hangar, it's 4'4", I believe.
So you can't extend higher than 5'6", so you're going to have to traverse from the mid bar to the other two. And if you watch the videos from the kickoff, you'll see that's what they were doing in the animation.
That answer your question? Okay, and then there's one more from 6705.
You bet.
Yes. So I know last year they had some reflective tape for vision. Will there be anything this year to help cameras figure out where the targets are and any landmarks that we should pay attention to?
On the hubs, they do have reflective tape.
Bingo. Vision targets. You got an entire section on them. 5.8.
Cool, that's all the questions, I think.
I have a question for 6705. Are they wearing their red bucket hats? I need an answer, Evan. I gotta know.
Yeah, they just put them back on for you.
Oh my gosh, they were off.
Okay.
I can't even see y'all, and I caught y'all.
Well, good luck, guys. I think this is going to be a good game. I think that this is going to give you guys a lot of opportunity to do some cool things. And I hate it when a match is determined based on fouls and tech fouls that are assigned by refs. I don't like that. I want you to be able to play the game. And I think that we've got that opportunity. And at the same time, we've got places to keep you guys safe and to keep the playing field even. So good luck. And looking forward to, I don't know whether they're going to do any kind of pre-event sessions or not. Maybe we'll see you, and if not, we'll see you at Dalton or Carrollton or Columbus or Albany. You guys take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Go Jackets.